Chapter 732. Sevres. As the battle between the ivory dragon and the beast of twilight grew more and more devastating, Sunny raced across the heavenly chain and approached the walls of the ivory city. Up above, Sevres and Noctis continued to rip each other apart, their fury terrible enough to shatter the sky. Effie was in no condition to fight, and Cassie had exhausted all of her soul essence. She had been battered during her escape from the falling ship, as well, so the two of them stayed behind, taking care of each other. There were only two members of their small cohort still capable of diving into the battle, Sunny and Kai. Each had their own task, and had gone their own way to complete it. From now on, and maybe until the very end of the nightmare, Sunny would be on his own. Summoning the Dark Wing, he pushed his way to the top of the city wall and remained there for a moment, hiding in the shadow of a graceful guard tower. The ivory city lay beneath him, bathed in sunlight. It was as beautiful as he had remembered, even more so up close. The graceful buildings were constructed of pristine white stone, with vibrant green vines crawling up their walls. Here and there, sparkling water murmured as it flowed through carved channels. Incredible aerial bridges and arching aqueducts connected dozens of flying islands together. Now that the sun had risen, thousands upon thousands of people poured onto the streets. All of them looked healthy and beautiful, their tan, dewy skin covered by white garments. Sunny could imagine Elias growing up happily in this beautiful place, in this paradise built on blood. Right now, every person in the Ivory City was looking up at the sky, fear and awe mixing on their faces. With eyes burning with zeal, all of them were whispering prayers. May the sun shine upon you, Lord Severax. Bless us, Ivory Dragon. And protect us. Protect us. Their prayers rose like a sea, battering into the crazed dragon that roared in sorrow and pain as the ruthless light bit into him again and again, drawing blood and driving him even deeper into the madness. Suddenly, Sunny shivered. He remembered what Noctis had told him once about the noble, valiant, and wise Sevres, the Ivory Lord, that he was both the sanest of them all and the closest to utter madness. Sevres had resisted hope longer than any other chain lord, but it was precisely for that reason that he was the most susceptible to her poison. Due to his uncompromising resilience, he had maintained most of his sanity intact, and so had never had a chance to build up a tolerance for the insidious influence of the demon of desire over the ages. Now that the death of Sun Prince pushed him over the edge, everything that Sevres had been stalwartly keeping suppressed broke out of control and flooded his mind in an instant. Hundreds of years of harrowing struggle, crashing into the bastion of his sanity all at once. Noctis had also said that the Ivory Lord both loved and hated his people, that they were a burden that weighed heavily on his soul, one which he could not escape due to his sense of duty, that they had bound the dragon to themselves with their faith, their devotion, their trust, and their dependency. Looking down, Sunny saw a wide square directly under the section of the wall he was hiding at. It was crowded with thousands of people, all staring at the sky with faith and hope shining in their eyes. Slowly, another image appeared in front of his eyes, the visage of the twisted rock as it had been in the future. All of its surface had been nothing but an uneven expanse of dark stone. That stone, however, had looked really strange. It was as if once, a long time ago, it had been melted by unimaginable heat and then solidified again, creating strange shapes and swirls. Here and there, blackened bones had protruded from the molten stone, telling the tale of countless humans and beasts who had drowned in that scorching inferno. The sight of them was eerie and disturbing, like something torn from the actual hell. He paled. Below him, the citizens of the Ivory City prayed. Protect us. Protect us. In the next moment, the dragon roared as he received an especially painful wound, beads of crimson blood rolling down his ivory scales. Losing the last crumbs of sense, he twisted in the air to better see his enemy and breathed out a torrent of immolating flame. However, his enemy was too cunning. Noctis had positioned himself between the dragon and the crowded streets, hopping to use the city below as a shield, or maybe hopping to taunt Severus into destroying it. His cruel trap had worked. The stream of pale light danced out of the way of the river of fire, which fell down and engulfed the square a moment later. Sonny staggered back. In an instant, thousands of people were burned to death, their flesh turning to ash. The square became a scorching inferno, with even the stone itself melting and turning into incandescent lava. Cries of pain and horror filled the air. Some of the people survived and tried to flee, but the fire was everywhere around them. There was no escape. This was the response the Ivory Lord sent to their prayers. Horrified, Severax froze in the air and looked down, shock swirling in his radiant, bestial eyes. Sonny could practically see an internal struggle that happened in the muddled mind of the magnificent dragon. For a short moment, the light of reason grew brighter in his eyes. And then it became fully extinguished. Not caring any more and longing for freedom, the dragon let out another furious roar, and then breathed out a powerful stream of fire, destroying a small part of the hateful enemy, but also drowning several streets of the Ivory City in flames. Sonny stared at the slaughter petrified, but then shook his paralysis off. It did not matter how vile and tragic the fate of the Ivory Dragon and his city had turned out to be. All that matters was that he now had to get through the burning hell below himself. With a low growl, Sonny summoned the memory of fire into the mantle of the underworld and jumped down. There was not much time left. As two immortals fought in the sky above the Ivory City, more and more of it became engulfed in fire. Driven mad by grief, pain, and the terrible weight of his endless life, the noble dragon had lost the last of his sanity. In his frenzy to destroy the elusive, hateful enemy, he brought down a deluge of immolating flame upon the beautiful city. The loss of life was tremendous. The suffering of dying people was indescribable. The heat was unbearable. Thousands died in the fire, and thousands more were being burned to ash with every minute. Panic and horror drowned the whole city, turning its citizens into a mindless mob. They tried to run, trampling countless people to death, only to be swallowed by the flame in the next second. The buildings of white stone were melting like candles, and graceful aerial bridges that connected the island were crumbling into the abyss. Suffering, death, and destruction reigned supreme. And above all of it, the ivory tower stood, sublime and heartlessly indifferent. Sonny traversed the dying city, witnessing the apocalyptic sight of its terrible demise. As he moved through the burning alleyways and streets, it seemed as though the whole world was coming to its end. He was surrounded by smoke, fire, and an echoing cacophony of human screams, assaulted from all sides by the ghastly smell of burning flesh and the pervasive feeling of desperate, primal fear. The Lord of Light was the God of creation, but he was also the God of destruction. Today, this aspect of his descended upon the doomed city in all its harrowing glory. Sonny himself was one mistake away from being destroyed. He was running through the burning nightmare, sticking to shadows where he could and using smoke to hide his presence from the panicking mob. With his powerful claws and talons, it was not hard for him to scale buildings or propel himself off their walls to stay above the crowd. Reaching the edge of an island, he could use a bridge, an aqueduct, or a heavenly chain to reach the next one. Sonny was fast and powerful enough to save himself from the fires that were swiftly spreading through the Ivory City, devouring flesh and stone with equal hunger. However, nothing was going to save him if Severax unleashed a river of flame on his head. Not even the mantle of the underworld was going to survive a direct clash against the dragon's flame for more than a second. All he could rely on were his intuition and quick reaction. Reaching the edge of a large building's roof, Sonny prepared to leap over the street below, but then staggered back and dove into the shadows, appearing a dozen meters away. A split second later, a pillar of raging flame fell from above, erasing the building he was aiming for from existence and taking the whole street with it. The roof he was standing on was cut in half, and the whole structure shuddered, starting to collapse into the sweltering inferno. The path forward was cut off by the annihilating fire, forcing him to change his course. Cursing, Sonny dashed to the side, jumped down and glanced at the sky. Surprisingly, Noctis was still resisting the frenzied dragon. The river of light that his transformed form consisted of looked pale and weak in the overbearing radiance of the sun. The aura of terrifying might that emanated from Severax made it seem even more inadequate. The difference in power between the two was clear and immense. And yet, the beast of twilight was holding his own. Now that the Ivory Lord had succumbed to madness and abandoned all reason, he had turned into a mindless beast. A great one, but a beast nevertheless. Despite being at a tremendous disadvantage, the sorcerer was using his cunning and devious malice to stay one step ahead of the enemy. Constantly moving and shifting its form, the pale light swirled around the dragon and seeped between his scales to relentlessly bite into his flesh. Even though each wound was small and inconsequential, they brought the beast a lot of pain. From time to time, the light coalesced into the giant wolf and sank its fangs into the dragon, shattering the scales directly. Noctis was also always careful to position himself between Severax and the Ivory City, forcing the crazed Chain Lord to cause more and more destruction. The more pain Severax experienced, the more of his beloved city he destroyed, the deeper his madness and desperation grew, and the less reason remained in his damaged mind, making it easier for the ruthless sorcerer to fight him. The countless tiny wounds he delivered to the dragon were slowly starting to accumulate. However, Noctis was being damaged himself as well. Although he was able to dodge most of the flame, each time, a small part of him was irrevocably destroyed. The light that constituted him looked much paler already. Sonny simply could not tell who was going to win this terrible battle. He had to be prepared for both outcomes. Just as Noctis had told him, as the two clashing transcendents circled in the sky, they slowly moved toward the ivory tower. Sonny was getting closer to it, too. He had already traversed half a dozen islands, somehow managing to suffer only a couple of serious burns. Now, only a few chains separated him from the great pagoda itself. As he climbed onto the last island before the one he was aiming for, a terrible roar suddenly thundered from above, making the whole world shudder. Falling to his knees, Sonny pressed his hands against his ears and looked up, stunned. What he saw made him freeze in shock. The great dragon Severax was falling. His ivory scales were painted red, and a large chunk of flesh was missing from his neck. A river of sizzling blood was flowing from the terrible wound, and one of his mighty wings seemed to be broken. Unable to support his weight in the air, the dragon plummeted from the skis and crashed heavily into the ivory island, raising a cloud of dust and disappearing from view. Sonny swayed, then slowly stood up. See, crazy bastard, he actually did it. Noctis had won. Turning around, he searched the sky and saw the form of a ghostly wolf being engulfed in flame. The pale light was being swiftly devoured by it, and then disappeared entirely. Instead, a small human figure fell down, landing somewhere far away in the city. He knew that Noctis was still alive. The sorcerer was immortal after all. However, Sonny doubted that he would be able to recover any time soon. It did not matter, though. The sorcerer had already done his part. Severax was mortally wounded, and all that remained was to thrust the knife into his flesh, making the wound actually kill him. Sonny dashed forward. The ivory tower loomed above him, obstructing the sky. He just had to reach the edge of the island and traverse one last chain to approach its foundation. The island he was currently traversing was devoid of any buildings. Instead, there was just one tall, jagged piece of white rock protruding from its center, with soot-covered chains hanging from it. Not paying it any attention, Sonny ran to the aerial bridge that led to the Ivory Island. As he approached it, however, he slowed down and then stopped completely. A lone human figure was sitting on the steps leading to the bridge. The stranger was relaxed and seemingly unconcerned by the titanic battle that had just taken place. With his back turned to the ivory tower, the man was looking directly at Sonny. Waiting for him, the Ivory Island was separated from the rest of the city by a wide chasm. Once, it had been connected to 7 islands by 7 unbreakable chains. Now only 2 remained. There had been several arching bridges leading to it as well, but most of them long collapsed. Only one still stood, arching and monumental, built of pristine white stone. An old man with a wrinkled face and gray hair was sitting on the steps leading to the bridge, dressed in a white tunic. It was different from the clothes most of the citizens wore, resembling that of a priest. The man had a frail body and pale blue eyes. The old man's face was strangely calm. He observed the burning city with solemn indifference, as if the weight of years made him numb to the cruelties of the mortal realm. Even though his world was ending, the elder remained poised and dignified. Noticing the approaching devil, the old man tiredly leaned on his cane. "Stop, creature. This is a sacred land. You are not allowed to go further." Sonny stopped a few meters away from the stranger and studied him for a few moments. Then he sighed and said, his voice even, "Why the charade? Drop it, Mordred." The old man looked at him with confusion, then suddenly grinned. His whole presence suddenly shifted, becoming much more energetic and unrestrained. He laughed dryly and then shook his head. "Ah, what a pity. What gave me away?" Sonny shrugged. "I knew that you would show up sooner or later, and there's not much of later left." Mordred, who inhabited the old and frail body, smiled. "True, true. Thank you very much, Sunless. You have fulfilled my request to keep Noctis alive very well. In fact." His face darkened a little. "I'd say that you even performed a little bit too well. Who could have thought that the Beast of Twilight would still win, despite not having the Night Oracle's support? It makes me feel as though all my ordeals in the north were a bit silly." The old man sighed, but then smiled again. "Well, no matter. It can still be salvaged, however. I was very serious. Sorry to say this, but you can't go any further, Sunless." Sonny tilted his head a little, staring at Mordred with a dark expression. "Oh yeah, how are you going to kill that damned dragon without my knife? I am sure you know that I visited the Temple of the Chalice." The old man gave him a polite nod. "Oh, I do. That was rather spectacular. But Sunless, you see, that is exactly why I can't allow you to cross that bridge." Sonny frowned. "What do you mean, why?" Mordred looked at him with surprise. "Well, because I need Severus alive, of course. Killing him would ruin months of torturous effort I put into preparing everything. Remaining in this feeble body all that time was not very pleasant, you know, but there are very few people that the Ivory Lord allows to tend to him, and this priest was the best choice." Sonny gritted his teeth, then uttered with frustration, "Keep Noctis alive, keep Severus alive, damn it. What the hell do you actually hope to achieve, Mordred? You are clearly not planning to free Hope. What else can end this nightmare? What do you want?" The old man blinked a couple of times, confusion appearing on his face. "Free Hope." He thought for a moment, then shook his head with a smile. "Of course, I am not here to free Hope. That is not the reason why I entered this seed." His smile twisted slightly, a disturbing glint igniting in his eyes. "I am here to kill her." As the words echoed in the silence, Sonny stared at the frail old man with a deep frown. Then he threw his head back and laughed. "Kill her, kill Hope. Have you completely lost your mind, Mordred? The banished prince shifted slightly, then said in a neutral tone, "And not completely." Sonny clenched his fists, then shook his head in indignation. "She is a demon, you fool, a divine being, a god. How are you, a mere awakened, going to kill her? How can you hope to even scratch her?" Mordred shrugged, then looked at him with a friendly smile. "Why, have you never wanted to kill a god?" Sonny stared at him with wide eyes. "I am of a rather high opinion of myself, but I am not delusional. I know my limits, Mordred, don't you?" The old man sighed. "It's not like killing a god is impossible. They are all dead after all. However, I understand your concern. I would not have wanted to face the demon of desire in battle." He lingered for a moment and then added, "But she is not exactly able to fight right now, is she? She is bound, sapped of most of her powers, imprisoned for 1,000 years, so, you see, I can't let you go breaking more of her chains. Your part is done, Sunless. Leave the rest to me. I will conquer this nightmare for both of us. Well, and reap the reward, of course." Sonny bared his fangs. "She might not be as powerful as she had been before Sun God put her in chains, but she is still a creature of divine rank. Your power alone will not be enough to wound her, let alone kill her. You are insane. Hope's poison must have gotten to you." Mordred smiled. "Ah, you are correct. I am not powerful enough to kill her alone. That is why I have spent months carefully putting a few useful ideas into the Ivory Lord's muddled mind. I needed Noctis to give him a little push, though, kill his brother, destroy his city. You did well to assist him." A dangerous gleam appeared in the old man's eyes. "Now that Severus has nothing left, he will direct his endless ire on Hope. That will be my chance. So, Sunless, I would advise you to stand down. If you truly know your limits, you won't stand in my way." Sonny stared at Mordred for a few moments, his eyes growing darker and darker. A tense silence settled between the two of them. Then a swirl of sparks appeared around the devil's hand. The old man looked at it, his gaze growing sharp and cold. He was waiting to see what weapon Sonny was going to summon. However, Sonny did not summon a weapon. Instead, an exquisite wooden chair appeared in his hand. Glaring at Mordred, Sonny put the chair on the ground, sat on it and crossed his arms. "Well, go on then. What are you waiting for? I wish you luck." Sonny sat comfortably on the elegant wooden chair, staring at Mordred with all four of his arms crossed. The chair was a bit small for his prodigious body, but due to the quality and durability of the materials it was made of, it managed to carry the weight rather well. Noctis really knew the value of good craftsmanship. The old man, meanwhile, met his deadpan gaze with a mildly surprised expression slowly appearing on his face. All around them, the Ivory City was being devoured by fire. After a while, Mordred shifted a little, and then said with amusement, "To be honest, I expected you to attack me." Sonny scoffed. "Why would I bother? You seem to be hell-bent on committing suicide. I can just wait until Hope kills you, then carry on with my initial plans." He thought for a bit and then added, "Plus, in the improbable case that you somehow succeed, I don't really lose anything. I will still become a master. Sure, the great and mighty clan Valor might suffer as the result, but what do I care? I have no relationship with them." The old man glanced at him with a pleasant smile. "That bow of yours suggests otherwise." Sonny chuckled. "My warbow, do you like it? Well, I like it very much. What a beauty, your family really knows how to craft a memory. However, you are mistaken if you think that I received it for rendering some service to Valor or being close to your father. In fact, they don't even know that I have it. I would prefer if it stayed that way, too." Mordred tilted his head a little. "Have no worry, Sunless. Your secret is safe with me. All your secrets, actually. I have to admit, though, with how paranoid you are, I thought that you would try to silence me at all costs. Aren't you afraid that I will reveal them after escaping from the nightmare?" Sonny smiled lazily, then shrugged. "Not really." He sighed and then said in a serious tone, "While it pains me that you know so much about me, you and I are similar in many ways. We both believe that knowledge is the origin of power, don't we? So, sharing my secrets would be no different from giving your power away. Why share the leverage you have on me with anyone when you can have it all to yourself?" Sonny's expression grew a little dour. "Of course, I would gladly kill you to destroy that leverage. However, the benefit of destroying you is not worth the risk of fighting you. You are one scary bastard, Mordred, you know that. Plus, I don't even know how to kill you, so what's the point?" He was not lying. Although Sonny had grown more powerful than he had expected inside the nightmare, Mordred was much older and had vastly more experience. He also had a far greater background. If Sonny's suspicions were correct, not only had the Prince of Nothing inherited the lineage of War God, but he had also been raised by both great clan Valor and Asterion. He was a monster created by not one, but two sovereigns. A monster capable enough to, maybe, outshine both of them. How could an outskirt rat like Sonny compete with that upbringing? He couldn't. Yet, at least not in a direct fight. A competition of wit, on the other hand. Who could say which one of them was more devious? As Sonny stared at him with a smile, Mordred remained silent for a few moments, and then slowly stood up. "What remarkable restraint! Are you sure you don't want to attack me, Sunless?" Sonny shook his head. "I really don't want to." The old man looked at him, then said with uncertainty, "Well, I'll be going then." He lingered for a few moments before turning around and taking a step away. Sonny cleared his throat. "There is one problem, though." Mordred froze, then faced him again, an amused smile appearing on his lips. His eyes glistened dangerously. "Oh," Sonny sighed. "As much as I don't want to fight you, and as much as I wish you luck in ending this nightmare, I am a very, very petty person. I also have a great memory. I tend to remember my grudges." He raised a hand and started counting on his fingers. "You used me, lured me into a trap, put me in hot water with clan Valor, caused me and my friend weeks of terrible suffering, almost cost us our lives, and then even tried to kill me yourself. You really, really owe me a lot, Mordred, don't you think?" The old man grinned. "Ah, I see how you could have been a little upset with my actions. Well, how do you suppose we should settle my debt, Sunless?" Sonny made himself more comfortable and smiled. Then he said in a cheerful tone, "I accept transcendent memories. 6 or 7 should do." Mordred stared at him for a bit, then laughed. "I see. Sadly, that would not be very convenient for me. Anything else you might consider?" Sonny looked at him with regret. "Well, in that case, there is one other thing. I guess I can just prevent you from killing Hope, ruin the plans you've been making for the better part of the decade, torture you ruthlessly for a few weeks, and then slowly destroy your body. That should make us even, I think." Mordred looked at him with a somber expression. "I thought you couldn't lie. Didn't you say that you wouldn't attack me?" Sonny shook his head. "I said that I don't want to attack you, never said that I won't." The old man sighed. "Yes, I noticed pity. I hope to avoid this." With that, the shadows around Sonny suddenly shifted and moved. A moment later, 5 identical four-armed devils rose from them, each at least 3 meters tall. They wore fearsome onyx armors, with darkness veiling their bestial faces and black eyes. Each had 4 horns, and each had one of them broken. The devils radiated a suffocating, frightening feeling of malice and furious power. Still sitting on his chair, Sonny stared at the 5 shadow spawns that surrounded him with trepidation. His face grew still. Gripping the extraordinary rock, he shivered and said glumly, "Well, that's not good at all." 5 reflections surrounded Sonny, each bearing his own image. The towering shadowkin devils looked nothing short of terrifying. Their gaunt, ironclad figures emanated a feeling of profound threat and malice, and their black eyes peered at him with inhuman intensity. It was deeply disturbing. "Damn, am I that scary?" Sonny leaned on the backrest of his chair and said without skipping a pause, "Lost from light, kill that wicked old man." The reflections continued to stare at him, unmoving. A few moments passed, but nothing happened. An awkward silence hung in the air. Mordred chuckled. "You didn't really think that this trick would work again, did you?" He smiled, then glanced at the shadow devils with satisfaction. "Naturally, I bound them to myself before you arrived." Sonny glared at the old man for a bit, then looked away and shrugged. "Well, it was worth a try anyway." "Disappointing." He studied the reflections for a second, trying to determine how powerful they were, exactly. Unlike how Mordred had appeared during their soul battle, now Sonny could only see one weak core in the frail body of the old man. It was dim and unremarkable, hinting that he was looking at the priest's own soul, or at least its perfect imitation. It seemed that determining which body the Prince of Nothing possessed in that manner was impossible. His own soul was perfectly hidden. The reflections, on the other hand, were different and quite bizarre. Sonny could see shadow cores inside each of the creatures, but despite looking like shadow devils, none of them were. All of them were ascended, but 2 out of 5 were mere beasts. 2 more were monsters, and 1 was a demon. Sonny had no idea how the class progression worked when it came to reflections, but he suspected that they were less powerful than the mirror beast, their elder sibling, had been. Mirror beast had lived a much longer life, and risen to an ascended devil, after all. Still, 5 ascended reflections were most likely more than enough to rip him to shreds, especially considering that each of them was reflecting a wielder of a divine aspect. Sonny looked at Mordred, hesitated, and said somberly, "Very impressive, but also a bit underwhelming. I guess slaughtering thousands of mundane humans was not very nourishing for your monsters, huh? Now that I see them, I do agree that your accomplishments in the north might have been silly." The old man looked at him with a dark expression. "There's still enough to kill you." Sonny grinned. "Oh, let's not. You are not going to kill me." Mordred raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that?" Sitting comfortably on his chair, Sonny shrugged. "What's the point? I am more useful to you alive. Plus, if you get rid of me, you can say goodbye to all the wonderful memories I possess. I would have been a bit scared if you had weeks to torture me into surrendering them, but you don't." The old man smiled. "This is a very reasonable answer. However, are you that sure I am a reasonable man, Sunless?" Sonny felt a cold shiver run down his spine and forced out a weak smile. "Ah, no, not really. I am not sure. In any case, you are also underestimating me." Mordred frowned. "How so? Your allies seem to have abandoned you. Your shadows are wounded and can't be summoned again. What can you do against reflections?" Glancing at the towering shadow devils with apprehension, Sonny lingered for a few moments, and then said, "Well, if you put it like that, it does seem like I can't do much. They are all very powerful indeed. I am already a bit of a menace, and these things possess all of my powers, wielding them with the might of ascendeds no less. However," he shifted his gaze to the old man, a wicked smile appearing on his lips, "the same can't be said about you, can it? You sacrificed all your cores to create these reflections. By now, you could have succeeded in creating 1, maybe 2. That still makes you weaker than me. More than that, I couldn't help to notice that your aspect, terrifying as it might be, doesn't offer you any direct combat augmentations. It's all pure utility. So, while I can't kill your monsters—" His eyes grew darker, suffused with a dangerous glow. "I probably stand a good chance of destroying your body before they can stop me." His 4 shadows were wrapped around his body, filling it with explosive might. There were just a few meters separating him from the frail old man. He could breach that distance in an instant. Mordred opened his eyes wide, took a shaky step back, and raised his hands to protect himself. "Oh no, please don't. What would I do without a body?" Then he shook his head and laughed. "It's not like there's a whole city full of people I can take, right? Come to think of it, maybe I'll travel outside the city, find one of your allies and wear them instead. Which one should I pick, huh? The child or the cripple? I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and deal with that infuriating oracle of yours at the same time. That is a great idea, don't you think?" Sonny grew quiet. "No, I don't think that it's a great idea." The old man looked at him darkly, then shook his head and turned around. "I suggest that you don't move, Sunless. My reflections won't kill you, but that doesn't mean that they will be gentle. Pain is pain." With that, he started climbing the steps leading to the bridge. Sonny stared at his back, gritting his teeth, then summoned the dying wish. As soon as the charm weaved itself and merged with the mantle of the underworld, he sent all 4 of his shadows to wrap themselves around the onyx armor, thus augmenting its underworld armament, enchantment 4 times over. Already strengthened by it, the effect of the dying wish became tremendously enhanced. Memory enchantments, death wish. Enchantment description. Those who witness the wielder of this memory are compelled, friends to be inspired, foes to seek the wielder out. Already a few steps away, Mordred suddenly slowed down, swayed a little, and then turned around. His face was tense and full of fury. "Argue what?" He stared at Sonny with madness and bloodlust in his eyes, then grimaced. "What a vile memory. Nice trick, Sunless, but it won't work on me." The old man smiled with disdain, then suddenly froze. Slowly, a deep scowl appeared on his face. "But why would you want me to attack, Sunless? That doesn't make any sense. You know how dangerous I am. Unless, of course." His eyes widened. At the same time, Sonny grinned. And far away from them, across the vast expanse of emptiness leading to the Ivory Island, a small figure appeared from the darkness of the sky below, flying swiftly toward the bleeding dragon. After Solvin and Sun, Prince had been defeated, and the light of dawn washed over the shattered remains of the Kingdom of Hope, bringing with it the frenzied fury of the Ivory Dragon. Sonny knew that Severax would not be the only obstacle in their way. Throughout all of it, he had never forgotten about Mordred. In truth, he was warier of the banished Prince of Valor than he was of the immortal saints, no matter how powerful and dreadful they were. The full force of a great clan had failed to contain the Prince of Nothing, so what hope did Sonny have? Of course, he was not sure that Mordred would end up as their adversary in this nightmare. They were allies during this hellish trial, after all, at least in theory. But he could not discount the possibility. The advice Master Jet had given Sonny before he ventured into the seed stuck with him. Most of the hard-won wisdom she had shared in the past ended up being instrumental to his survival, so he made sure to remember her words. For that reason, Sonny and Kai agreed on a very simple plan. One of them took the obsidian knife, and the other took the glass knife. Depending on which of the immortals fell, one man was going to finish the job, while the other was going to prevent the Prince of Nothing from intervening, in case the need to do so arose. As the saying went, it was unwise to put all your eggs in one basket. The type of egg Sonny had the most experience with had belonged to a great devil, so he was not quite sure why exactly keeping eggs in a basket was so detrimental. But he did agree with the general idea. And so, from the moment the frail old man appeared in his view, Sonny had pursued a single goal. He had to keep the attention of Mordred and all 5 of his reflections on himself. Even though there was a small possibility that he could emerge victorious if the 2 of them clashed in earnest, Sonny did not consider his chances of defeating the banished prince in battle high. especially not while being exhausted after the furious assault on the flying fleet and devoid of the support of his shadows. He had never intended to actually fight Mordred. All he wanted to do was to stall him. For that reason, Sonny engaged Mordred in a lengthy conversation, created the false perception that he was still in possession of the glass knife by asking a few misleading questions, and provoked his opponent into revealing the 5 reflections. Perhaps the Prince of Nothing was poisoned by hope enough to lose a small part of his cunning, or perhaps he fell for the trap that awaited most habitual liars and failed to account for how warped his impression of people was. Perhaps he underestimated how proficient Sonny grew in utilizing his flaw for his own benefit. In any case, for once, Mordred ended up as the one being manipulated instead of the one pulling the strings. Sonny might have not been stronger than him, but he did manage to outwit the banished prince. Today, he turned out to be the more devious of the two, even if just barely. He won the fight without lifting a finger, using only a wooden chair and his devilish tongue. Well, to be precise, he did not even use his tongue. He used a rock instead. As soon as all reflections revealed themselves, Kai started to move, and by the time he reached the Ivory Island, it was already too late to stop him. Almost. The Prince of Nothing still could have used his aspect to move through the reflections and invade the archer's soul. However, Kai was wearing the anvil amulet that Sonny had given him. This talisman had been forged by the Sovereign of Valor himself and made the wearer immune to Mordred's soul possession. Even if the banished prince jumped through the reflections into Kai's eyes, he was not going to be able to possess him. That left only the reflections, which were currently turned into copies of Sonny and wielded his divine aspect. Each had access to the memories he wore and his aspect abilities, including Shadow Step. They could still reach the island in time to prevent Kai from delivering the killing blow to Severax. Sonny had to stop them at all costs and buy his friend a few precious seconds. But that was easier said than done. As a small human figure streaked from the darkness of the sky below toward the slumped silhouette of the ivory dragon, Mordred swiftly turned and narrowed his eyes, instantly realizing that he had been played. Before he could react, however, a tide of shadows suddenly exploded from the small lantern hanging on Sonny's waist, enveloping everything around them in impenetrable darkness. The light of the sun was swiftly destroying the shadows, but at the same time, it was being devoured by the lantern, creating a strange equilibrium. The shadows themselves were ancient, deep, and resilient. Sonny had collected them from the dark sides of the islands surrounding the sanctuary before departing for the war. With no light remaining around them, there were also no reflections. With no reflections, Mordred was robbed of a large part of his power for a moment. That did not help at all against the 5 reflections, though, since each of them was as comfortable in the shadows as Sonny himself was, they were his perfect copies after all. Knowing that, Sonny decided to try a desperate gamble. The mantle of the underworld was still augmented by 4 shadows, its underworld armament, enchantment, empowering the dying wishes, effect manifold. Sonny himself was strongly affected by the compelling aura of the charm, feeling an almost irresistible urge to throw himself at the reflections and tear them apart. However, this sensation was swiftly disappearing, since he had already dismissed the iron statuette. Instead, he summoned the broken oath into the onyx armor. And since the 5 reflections were mirroring him, each of them reflected that change, too. Only the demon turned out to be smart enough to stop himself and consider the consequences. The beasts and monsters failed to realize the result of their actions in time. Mordred moved, and so did the shadow devils. But just as they did, the vile charm fully weaved itself into existence. Augmented by the enchantment of the mantle of the underworld, its soul-eroding aura was strengthened and flowed outward like invisible poison. The armor, however, was itself augmented 4 times over by Sunny's shadows, making the empowering effect tremendously more pronounced. And on top of that, 4 out of the 5 reflections suddenly emanated the same ferocious aura. The 5 overcharged fields of soul erosion merged together, turning into something far more vicious and destructive than the sum of its parts, into something truly horrid. Even though the mantle of the underworld provided Sunny with a substantial degree of resistance against soul attacks, he couldn't help but let out a scream. The reflections opened their mouths in agony, too, although no sound came out of them. Mordred, however, Mordred did not enjoy the same protection that Sunny and the reflections received from the onyx armor. The underworld armament allowed the mantle to accommodate and augment a charm memory, channeling its enchantment as if it was inherent to the armor itself. That alone made the mantle of the underworld incredibly flexible. What was more, this quality truly shined when wielded by Sunny. He could have augmented the broken oath with his 4 shadows, but chose to wrap them around his armor instead, achieving an even better result. Not only was the effect of the augmentation shared and enhanced, but all the other enchantments of the mantle of the underworld were augmented as well. Among them was Stalwart, which granted him extremely high protection against physical attacks, high protection against elemental attacks, and most importantly, a moderate amount of protection against mind and soul attacks. Currently, the mantle was simultaneously radiating a tremendously damaging soul annihilation aura and providing him with vastly increased resistance to soul damage. Even then, when 5 of these auras clashed and combined together, he let out a scream and collapsed to the ground, consumed by harrowing agony. His already wounded soul was being frayed and eroded at a terrible rate, and all he could do was writhe on the ground, barely clinging to any resemblance of consciousness. The 5 reflections were not doing much better. Even though their ascended souls, or whatever it was they had instead of souls, possessed a far better quality due to a superior rank, they had fewer cores. While that was not enough to make them succumb to soul annihilation faster than Sunny by itself, that also meant that they had fewer shadows, and therefore their reflected versions of the mantle enjoyed less augmentation, providing them with less resistance to soul damage. What it all meant, Sunny had no idea. He could not guess who was going to be destroyed first, the reflections or him. As far as he could tell, their chances were about equal. However, things were very different when it came to Mordred. Unlike Sunny and the reflections, he did not enjoy the protection of the mantle of the underworld. He was also only able to steal the aspect of the body he possessed, while his own strange and terrible ability to mirror someone's powers only worked inside the victim's soul. He could not simply copy the onyx armor onto himself, nor could he augment it. For the moment, Mordred was defenseless. With a startled yelp, the old man awkwardly fell to his knees and then rolled down the steps, ending up on the ground not too far away from Sunny. A stifled howl escaped from his lips, and his eyes opened wide, full of shock and terrible pain. The suffering Sunny and the reflections experienced affected him so much worse. Any other awakened would have been swiftly destroyed, but the Prince of Nothing persisted somehow. Several swirls of sparks instantly appeared around his body, heralding the appearance of protective memories. Who knew how vast and powerful his soul arsenal was? Mordred could have possessed a memory capable of turning the tide of events completely. But very few memories were capable of manifesting themselves instantly. Most took several precious seconds to appear, and usually the more powerful ones took the longest. By the time the sparks of light turned into tangible objects, he could have been either already dead or too severely damaged to be able to act. Writhing in agony, Sunny threw a burning look at the old man and gritted his teeth so hard that his fangs pierced his lip, sending drops of blood rolling down. "Die, die, you bastard, just hurry up and die." A desperate hope that Mordred would fail to survive the soul annihilation filled his heart, despite the fact that Sonny did not really think that getting rid of the prince would be so easy. He seriously doubted that Mordred would allow himself to be killed in this fashion. Not to mention that as far as he knew, the Prince of Nothing was as immortal as the cursed transcendence of the Kingdom of Hope. Both his physical and spirit bodies had been destroyed in the past, but that did not stop Mordred from continuing to exist somehow. The great clan Valor certainly did not lack means of dealing soul damage, but they had failed to get rid of his reflection. "I don't care, just die." Sonny would have been satisfied with just destroying Mordred's mortal shell, anyway. His true task was to buy Kai enough time to kill the ivory dragon, and forcing the prince to search for another body would do just that. Sadly, Mordred had the same idea. If he had lost all reason because of the pain, things could have turned differently, but the Prince of Nothing was nothing if not cool-headed and calculating. Despite the terrible suffering of having his soul slowly torn to pieces, he kept some of his composure and ability to think intact. Twisting, Mordred struggled to raise his head and looked in the direction of one of the reflections. The shadow spawn was on his knees, his bestial face contorted by a grimace of agony. The Prince of Nothing paled and then whispered something. A moment later, the figure of the kneeling devil rippled and shattered like a piece of glass. Something swift and intangible moved through the air and entered Mordred's body. Then another reflection shattered, and then another, and then another. In an instant, 4 of the 5, both beasts and both monsters, were gone, leaving a lone demon behind. As they disappeared, the components of the soul-annihilating field disappeared as well. Only Sonny's own augmented aura was left to spread the invisible poison. He let out a trembling sigh of relief, and then dismissed the broken oath entirely. Almost at the same time, a silver bracelet, a necklace made of strange black pearls, and a bone scepter appeared on Mordred's body and in his hand. Each of the memories, without a doubt, provided him with a degree of soul protection, but by now they were of no use. With his soul in shambles and barely keeping itself together, Sonny remained laying on the ground. He groaned, and then threw a tired glance at his enemy. The flood of soul essence he was sending into the shadow lantern had run dry, and the sunlight finally prevailed, dismantling the dome of shadows that surrounded them. Mordred looked different somehow. The old man's body remained the same, but now a subtle sensation of immense, turbulent power emanated from it, as if Sonny was facing a titan instead of a man. No way could it be. 2 monsters and 2 beasts. Between the 4 of them, they had shared 6 soul cores. Had Mordred not dismissed the reflections, but actually absorbed them in order to strengthen his soul and survive the powerful attack? How did it even work? How could an awakened absorb ascended cores? Would they weaken, or would all that excess power rip his soul to shreds from the inside? Sonny did not know. All he knew was that he was utterly beaten and spent, and there was an ascended demon and an awakened titan in the guise of an old man in front of him, wrath burning in their eyes. But that did not matter, because at that moment, an inhuman, pained cry rolled across the empty expanse of the empty void and reached their ears. It was the voice of the ivory dragon, Severax. His dying breath, while Sonny and Mordred struggled to survive as their souls were being destroyed. A human figure emerged from the darkness of the sky below and shot into the sunlight, flying with incredible speed. It was a man with skin that looked like polished bark and a burned, disfigured face. His armor was battered and painted dull by dried blood, and the quiver attached to his belt was long empty. The man had been an officer of the Sun Legion once, but now he returned to kill its commander. His eyes were full of resolve. Months had passed since the terrible day when Kai and his most brave soldiers were chained to the white cliff on the Sacrifice Island and left there to be devoured by the ivory dragon. Who could have thought that he would be back to this cursed place so soon? Leaving the heat of the burning city behind, Kai had hidden himself under the island where his comrades were turned to ash by the dragon's flame, waited for Sunny to get the full attention of the Prince of Valor, and then dashed forward without looking back. He did not wish to see the white cliff and the soot-covered chains hanging from its surface ever again. Flying under the last bridge connecting the rest of the city to the Ivory Island, he avoided being noticed too soon and then ascended into the sunlight. Behind him, a dome of shadows suddenly appeared at the entrance to the bridge, hiding his friend from sight. With his heart growing heavy, Kai soared above the emerald grass of the Ivory City and finally saw his goal. A magnificent dragon was laying on the ground, blood streaming from his mangled neck. His white scales were painted crimson, and one of his wings was broken. But the great beast was still alive. He was still breathing. He was immortal after all. But not for long. In his hand, Kai held a knife made of ghostly glass. Inside the knife, the dragon's fate was sealed, placed there by a ruthless god. Was Kai breaking the will of the gods by delivering it back to its owner, or completing their design? He did not know, and he did not care. All he cared about was killing the dragon. Kai had never been very strong or very brave or very smart. It took him a long time to grow a little. He was not a person of great conviction either. But if there was one thing he believed, it was that Severax had to die and that his ghastly reign had to end. The beautiful city he ruled was just too vile. Gritting his teeth, Kai ignored the pain that had tormented him for months and lunged at the gargantuan form of the dragon. The glass knife glistened in his hand. But even terribly wounded, the immortal transcendent was still immensely powerful and deadly. How could a mere awakened ever hope to wound him? Before Kai could thrust the ghostly blade into the exposed flesh on the great beast's neck, Severax suddenly stirred. His eyelids flew up, revealing inhuman amber eyes. His maw opened slightly, wisps of smoke escaping it. The dragon moved his healthy wing, and a torrent of wind crashed into Kai, sending him spinning. The glass knife scratched uselessly against impenetrable scales, and he was thrown away. A moment later, a giant claw brushed across his chest. The young man dashed away in time to avoid being killed, but just this light touch was enough to rip his breastplate open and shatter a few of his ribs. With a groan, Kai fell on the soft grass. His speed was so great that his body slid for a few dozen meters, and by the time he rose shakily to his knees, the dragon was already looking at him, ready to attack. A hint of confusion surfaced from the ocean of madness hidden in his eyes. Severax lingered for a moment, and then a low, tired, sonorous voice resounded from all around them. I know you." Kai gritted his teeth. His surprise attack had failed. He failed. Now that the Transcendent was aware of him, there was little chance of delivering the fateful strike. No matter how wounded and exhausted the Ivory Lord was, he would still be immeasurably faster, stronger, and more powerful than an awakened with a weak aspect. He would crush Kai in an instant. The immortal was not going to die. Hope was not going to escape. The nightmare was not going to end. His friends would not be saved. Kai might have been able to fly through the sky and see far and wide. But he was no dragon. The man with a disfigured face looked at the immortal beast towering in front of him. He shook slightly and then lowered his head. And then he lunged forward, sending bits of torn grass into the air. He was fast, incredibly fast, but Severax was faster. The great beast twisted his neck, protecting the wound left on it by the fangs of the beast of twilight, and then opened his maw to crush the small human between his jaws. Perhaps Kai could have dodged, but he didn't. Instead, he accelerated even more and flew straight into the dragon's maw, which instantly closed, giant fangs striking against each other with a deafening sound. Just like that, the crippled man was gone. The dragon froze for a moment, stunned by the little human's unflinching bravery. Then he suddenly shuddered and let out a tortured cry. Kai, who had plunged the glass knife into the soft flesh of the great beast's tongue, was thrown back and crashed heavily onto the ground. His bark-like skin was smoldering, scorched once again by the heat of the dragon's flame. His armor was disintegrating. And the Ivory Lord, meanwhile, was becoming mortal again. Now that his fate had been returned to him, the terrible wound on his neck was sapping him of life. A few seconds more and it was going to kill him. But no, not yet. As a long, sorrowful cry of the great beast echoed across the burning city, Severus stubbornly refused to die. Straining his battered body, he slowly crawled forward, desperately trying to reach the ivory tower, which he had sworn to protect. Leaving a trail of blood behind, the beautiful white dragon tortuously wrapped his body around the great pagoda and tiredly lowered his head to the ground in front of its gates. His eyes slowly closed. It was his duty to protect it. He was going to, even in death. He promised. Laying on the soft grass in the middle of a burning inferno, the dragon let out a soft breath. He imagined a different picture. A picture of a beautiful white city, its streets bathing in gentle sunlight, full of happy and kind people, thriving, peaceful, and safe. A few moments later, Severus, the blessed of the sun, was dead. As the ivory dragon died, an invisible ripple spread through the world. The whole city trembled slightly, and then one of the two remaining chains that bound the ivory island to the rest of Hope's shattered kingdom broke with a deafening ring. The broken chain fell into the darkness of the sky below, leaving only a single tether holding the island in place. The island's position shifted, not by much, but enough to cause the arching stone bridge to crack, shudder, and then slowly crumble. A cloud of stone dust rose into the air as the massive structure collapsed, enveloping the patch of grass where Sunny and Mordred lay, still reeling from the deadly soul attack. Sunny coughed and waved his hand in front of his face, weakly trying to chase the dust away. Damnation! The Prince of Nothing, meanwhile, was slowly rising to his feet. With a stagger, he regained his footing and looked in the direction of the ivory tower, his old face growing dim. Mordred remained silent for a while, and then said evenly, "Well, that is a bit unfortunate." Sunny let out a hoarse laugh, causing the old man to turn around and glance at him darkly. Then he tried to sit up but failed. The Prince of Nothing scoffed. "Drop the act, Sunless. I know you are not that weakened." Sunny cursed, then stopped pretending and sat up with a groan. He was indeed in a very bad shape, drained of essence, and barely alive because of how severely damaged his soul was. However, he was indeed not as weak as he had wanted to mislead Mordred into believing. The old man shook his head, then smiled. "Using my own reflections against me, how clever. I expected something like that from you." Then his face abruptly grew dark, and he gazed in the direction of the ivory tower once again. His voice sounded quiet and uncertain. "That, however, that I did not expect at all. It should not have been possible. I don't understand. Giving one of the knives away is not in your nature. With how cynical and distrustful you are, you should have clung to them to the end. How did I make this mistake?" Sunny grinned. "I guess I've changed." Mordred frowned, then slowly shook his head. "People don't change that easily." The grin on Sunny's face became a little brittle. "It wasn't easy." The old man remained motionless for a while, then sighed heavily and turned around to face him. At the same time, his remaining reflection did the same. The Prince of Nothing stared at the battered shadow devil for a few moments, then said amiably, "Sunless, my friend, please give me one reason why I shouldn't kill you." Sunny blinked a couple of times, then answered with a dark smile. "In case you didn't notice, People who try to kill me tend to end up dead instead. Mordred grinned dangerously. I am sure I can manage. Well, crap, I'm a bit sure myself. He tilted his head, then said doubtfully, because I still have the divine memory you want to get your hands on. The old man took a step forward, causing the reflection to do the same. Normally, that would have been a good reason. But right now, to be honest, Sunless, I am starting to wonder if it's worth the effort. Sunny lingered for a bit, then raised an eyebrow. I'm pretty pleased. The Prince of Nothing laughed. Not good enough. Sunny stared at him, slowly circulating what little essence he had left through his body. His shadows were damaged and restoring themselves in the nurturing black flames of his soul. His strength was depleted. His allies were far away and in even worse shape than him. Things were looking bleak. He sighed and then said in a neutral tone, Look, sure, you can probably kill me, but make no mistake, I won't make it easy for you. More importantly, I'll make sure to resist for a long, long time. Mordred smiled politely. So far, I am liking everything that I am hearing. Sunny grinned. Aren't you forgetting something? The Prince of Nothing lingered for a moment, then frowned. And what might that be? Climbing back onto his chair, Sunny leaned on the backrest and let out a relieved sigh. Then he pointed at the ivory tower. This nightmare is coming to the end. There's not much time left until we are returned to the real world. Precious time that you are going to waste trying to get rid of me. Mordred looked at him with a dark expression. That is all right. My schedule is suddenly free anyway. What else is there to do? Sunny shook his head. You might have lost the opportunity to kill the demon of desire, but have you forgotten about the demon of destiny? There is a whole ebony tower beneath us, free for the plunder. The old man's frown deepened. The divine flames are much more intense and plentiful during this time. The rift in them can't be traversed by the likes of us. Not that there's enough time to anyway. Unless... His expression suddenly changed. Sunny nodded. Indeed, the sky below cannot be traversed, but we just happen to be near the Ivory Island and the portal that stands behind the tower. Now, you can waste time trying to kill me, or you can try to pour enough divine flame into it and get your hands on all the toys left behind by Nether. Just don't be an idiot like me and let the time catch up to them after the seal is broken. Mordred stared at him for a few moments and then grinned. You are just hoping that the strange rot inside the ebony tower is going to devour me, aren't you? After all, it is not as starved yet in this time. Sunny coughed. Guilty as charged, still. Are you planning to kill a sovereign without taking a risk from time to time? Hurry up and decide. The clock is ticking. The old man studied him for a while, not saying anything. Gradually, Sunny grew extremely uncomfortable under that gaze. Damned bastard, your desire to kill me can't be stronger than your desire to take revenge on Clan Valor. Hope, do your thing, come on. Eventually, Mordred chuckled, shook his head and said, 2 sovereigns. Sunny raised an eyebrow. What? The old man turned around and headed to the edge of the island, followed by his reflection. 2 sovereigns. I plan to kill Asterion too. Although that will probably be much, much harder than dealing with my father still, I am as good at remembering grudges as you are, Sunless. So pray that we never meet again. He stopped near the very edge of the empty abyss of the sky below, lingered at it for a few moments, and then said somberly, Although who will hear your prayers? The gods are dead. With that, the Prince of Nothing stepped into the darkness and disappeared, taking his reflection with him. Sunny was left alone on the empty island, struggling to believe that he actually survived. He looked down at his exquisite wooden chair, then at the rock in his hand. Then he let out a shaky breath. Damn, I can't believe that worked for a few moments. Sunny remained motionless, staring at the beautiful ivory walls of the great pagoda that towered above the world. Although the whole city was being consumed by immolating flame, here at its precipice, everything was calm and quiet. He couldn't quite believe it. Solving, the saint of war, was dead. The immortal prince encased in the mountain of moving steel was dead. The noble dragon that had dutifully guarded the tower was dead, as well. They won. The nightmare was conquered. More or less. From the blood-soaked arena of the Red Colosseum, to the never-ending prison of nightmares, to the numinous temple of the chalice, to the furious battle for the sky above the ivory city, to confronting the Prince of Nothing. Somehow, he had lived through all of it and triumphed. What were the chances of that? Just 5 months, but it felt like a lifetime. Of course, there were a few issues left. Most of the army of the Paris chain lords was still intact and on its way to the city. The cohort had dealt a terrible blow to the small part of it, but hundreds upon hundreds of flying ships still remained, carrying thousands upon thousands of soldiers. Now that their commanders were dead, he was not sure what would happen to them and how they would react. Noctis was nowhere to be found, and hope was still chained, even if not for long now. With a sigh, Sonny stood up and grimaced as a feeling of sickening weakness overwhelmed him. His soul was terribly damaged. He had never abused it to this degree before, not even during the siege of the Crimson Spire. His body was not doing too great either. Sonny had given his all to come this far, and now he was at the end of his rope. But he was also so close to becoming a master. Slowly walking to the edge of the island, he looked into the darkness of the sky below for a few moments, summoned the dark wing, and then glided down to the last remaining chain holding the ivory island in place. There was not enough essence left in his soul to turn into a swift shadow, and he was too tired to run, so Sonny simply walked forward, using his enchanted cloak to scale the uneven links of the heavenly chain from time to time. It took him a while to traverse the wide chasm of emptiness and climb to the surface of the familiar tranquil island. The emerald meadow, the calm surface of a clear lake, the peaceful grove of ancient trees. He had been here before, in the distant future. Of course now, the island did not look exactly the same. There were pools of dragon blood sizzling in the green grass and wisps of smoke floating in the air, brought over from the burning city by the wind. He looked at the ivory tower and saw the body of a beautiful white dragon wrapped around it, not yet reduced to weathered bones. Sonny remained motionless for a bit and then went to find Kai. The young man was laying on the grass not too far away, unconscious. His armor had melted and disintegrated, and his bark-like skin seemed damaged and scorched. Many of his bones were broken, and his disfigured face was contorted by a grimace of pain. But he was alive. After checking on his friend, Sonny came to the conclusion that Kai's life was not in danger. His wounds, while serious, were not enough to kill an awakened, at least not in a short time. Not knowing what else to do, Sonny summoned the puppeteer's shroud, rolled it, and placed the soft fabric under the archer's head as a pillow. Then he lingered for a few moments, patted Kai on the shoulder and stood up. Then he slowly walked forward and stood in front of the dead dragon's head, looking at the closed gates behind it. This was it. The prison of hope. As he studied the gates, something suddenly rustled behind him. Sonny remained motionless for a few moments and then slowly turned around. His eyes were dark and hollow. Noctis did not look as bad as he had after the battle with Solvin, but he also did not look good. The sorcerer was battered and beaten, his body covered by terrible burns. His elegant garments had turned into rags, and his raven-black hair was singed and uneven. He also looked different. It was as though the burden of madness that had clouded his beautiful gray eyes finally disappeared, leaving them sparkling and clear. The sorcerer looked radiant and at ease, emanating a cool and calming aura. His friendly presence enveloped Sunny like an embrace. Perhaps this was how he had been centuries ago, before the duty of being a shackle to desire turned him twisted and weighed down by the curse of eternal servitude. Noctis glanced up at the ivory expanse of the great pagoda and then looked at Sunny with a smile. "Ah, Sunless, please excuse my disheveled appearance. Looks like we've won, doesn't it?" Sunny lingered for a few moments, then offered him a silent nod. After that, he faced the sorcerer and asked, "So what now? This is it, we are done." Noctis remained silent for a bit, then lightly shook his head. "Well, actually, there is one small thing left to do." A crooked smile appeared on Sunny's face, and he looked away, hiding his eyes from the sorcerer. His voice resounded from the extraordinary rock, tinged with a bitter emotion. "I thought you said that she can break one chain on her own." Noctis smiled. "Oh, I think that she can, however." The immortal's smile paled and then disappeared, leaving his face strangely bare. "That doesn't mean that she should." He sighed and then looked away at the pillars of smoke rising above the dying city. His gaze was distant and solemn. "Have you ever seen a wolf gnaw its paw off to escape a trap, Sunless? Ah, it's a terrible thing to behold. I wouldn't wish such a fate on anyone." Noctis remained silent for a while, and then added in a wistful tone, "Wolves are meant to be free." Then a carefree smile appeared on his beautiful face once again, and the sorcerer turned to Sunny with sparks dancing in his gray eyes. "So, my friend, the time has finally come for me to request something of you." He reached out with his hand and opened his palm. Sunny remained silent, refusing to look in the sorcerer's direction. "Will you give me the obsidian knife?" "Got it." Sunny wanted to say so much. He wanted to do so much. He felt so much. But he knew that it would have been a wrong and cruel thing to do. A betrayal. He sighed heavily and then faced Noctis. A swirl of sparks appeared around his hand. "I have never seen a real wolf, you know. And yes, I will since you ask nicely." He opened the lid of the covetous coffer, rummaged inside, and then placed the knife cut from a single piece of obsidian in the sorcerer's hand. Noctis received it and then calmly looked at the black blade. His fingers slowly closed around the handle. A sad smile appeared on his face. "Well then, I guess this is a goodbye. Farewell, Sunless. You have been a great friend to me, and I hope that I have been a good friend to you too." He sighed, lingered for a few moments, and then added, "Before we part, however, I must tell you something." Sunny looked at him darkly and asked in a hoarse voice, "What?" Noctis silently shook his head. You really should stop wearing all black. What a terribly drab color. Ah, Sunless, you are better than this." With that, the sorcerer laughed and took a step forward. He hesitated for a second, then locked Sunny in a hug. Because of the difference in their heights, Sunny had to bend down a little. Noctis chuckled, then grew silent for a moment. Then he sighed and whispered, his voice suddenly low and somber. Just 4 words, each carrying immeasurable weight. "Never trust the gods." Then the sorcerer let go of Sunny, smiled one last time and walked away. Soon he disappeared from sight. And not too long after that, the ivory island trembled slightly as the last chain holding it in place broke apart. Sunny gritted his teeth, then looked away and wiped his eyes. His shoulders fell. "Damn scoundrel, you tricked me again." Sunny stood motionless for a while, feeling the ground move beneath him. Now that all 7 of the chains were broken and the ivory tower became completely untethered from the rest of the Kingdom of Hope, it started to ascend. Slowly at first, and then faster and faster, the island it stood upon soared into the sky, leaving the shattered land behind. And as it did, Sunny felt the nightmare coming to the end. Slowly, he walked to the edge and looked down at the burning city below. The beautiful buildings of white stone were melting. The aerial bridges and elegant aqueducts were collapsing. unable to withstand the terrible heat. The streams of clear water were turning into scalding steam. All around, he could see nothing but an ocean of flame. The wind brought with it the distant sound of human cries, smoke, and the smell of burning flesh. Thousands of people, those who still lived, were drowning in the fiery ocean, turning into piles of blackened bones and ash. The Ivory City was dying. Was this what salvation looked like? In the thousands of years to come, the scorched islands were going to crumble into the sky below one after another, forming the tier. The twisted rock would eventually be the last one to fall. As the ivory tower rose higher and higher, the sight of the dying city did not encompass all of Sonny's vision anymore. Now, he saw further and wider. The landscape of the Kingdom of Hope was laid bare in front of him. He saw the shape of a giant steel corpse swinging below a faraway island on a broken chain, and a shape of a shattered ship laying on the ground. Effie and Cassie were somewhere there, as well, but the distance was too great for Sonny to see them. He saw countless islands, some of them verdant and green, some of them gray and desolate. There were forests and lakes, rivers and hills, human settlements, small and large. He saw people, cattle, beasts, and nightmare creatures. He saw the chains stretching into the distance as they connected the islands together. Looking up from the ground, Sonny saw numerous flying ships rushing toward the burning city. There were hundreds and hundreds of them, some with white sails, some with red. The army of the fallen chain lords had arrived. As the ivory island rose even higher, the sky around it started to change. The change was subtle at the beginning, but as the ivory tower continued to ascend, it became more and more pronounced. The invisible power that held the flying islands above the abyss of the sky below was shifting. As its heart climbed higher and higher, it was slowly becoming more and more overbearing. The giant enchantment was losing its balance. Sonny shivered as he realized what was happening. The crushing was coming to the chained isles for the first time. As he watched, it descended upon the shattered remains of the Kingdom of Hope in all its vicious might. Across numerous islands, dust suddenly rose into the air. Ancient forests were flattened in an instant, tall hills broke apart, rivers boiled and changed their course. Settlements were turned into ruins. Countless humans, beasts, and nightmare creatures were cruelly killed, not knowing what had killed them. The flying ships were hit the hardest, every one of them instantly turning into a cloud of splinters, debris, and broken bodies. The mighty army was gone in a second. The scale of the destruction was too large to comprehend. Sonny watched as the Kingdom of Hope was turned into the chained isles, paralyzed by the inconceivable horror of that sight. For a while, all thoughts disappeared from his head. Then suddenly, his eyes widened. Cassie, Effie. For a moment he was consumed by fear, but then his heart slowly calmed. No, they were all right. Cassie had always been good at predicting when the islands would enter the crushing, back in the future. She would have warned Effie if they were in danger and taken them both to safety. Sonny sighed with relief. Now that his paralysis was broken, however, another thought suddenly entered his mind. He took an uncertain step back from the edge, then turned around and ran to the center of the island. Approaching the dead dragon, he hurriedly climbed over the beast's massive head and jumped down, landing near the gates of the ivory tower. The ancient doors were closed shut, as if no one had opened them in 1,000 years. Sonny gritted his teeth and pulled, putting the strength of all his shadows into it. Hope, he had to see hope. Succumbing to the pressure, the gates slowly moved. Tortuously slowly, one side of them slid forward, creating an opening. Not wasting any more time, he pushed himself into the narrow gap and entered the ivory tower. Soon he saw the familiar great hall, its vast expanse bathed in light that streamed through tall windows. 7 chains sprawled from the pristine white floor, as if growing out of it, each ending in a broken shackle. The shackles were bleak and marred, their metal torn. There was fresh blood on the broken shackles, suffused with a radiant golden glow. And between them, Sonny staggered and involuntarily fell to his knees. Every passion, every desire, every emotion dwelling in his heart suddenly surged forward and ignited, breaking out of control. In the center of the great hall, surrounded by a swirling hurricane of light and darkness, a vague and graceful silhouette towered above the broken chains. He couldn't quite tell where the light ended, and where her numinous body began. Perhaps Hope had no body at all, and was instead made of pure radiance, pure darkness. He felt as if her nebulous visage was almost human-like, but also inexplicably alien. The shapes and contours were both correct and wrong, both familiar and strange, both pleasing and revolting. And beautiful, so beautiful. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. She was divine, unholy, unknown, unknowable. A demon. And she was leaving. Sonny couldn't see much, but he clearly understood that Hope was ready to disappear. Maybe she was already half gone, and all he saw was an afterimage. And yet he had to. His mind was scattered and empty, and he didn't quite remember what he wanted to do. What he desired. Sonny gritted his teeth and then screamed, letting his desire dictate the question. Wait, don't go, tell me why the Lord of Light did this. Why did the gods imprison you? Why couldn't they just kill you? Why? The demon of desire paid him no attention. For a moment, Sonny thought that he would not receive an answer. But then something changed. Hope moved and was suddenly beside him. Her face, which was weaved of light and darkness, encompassed the whole world. Her radiant eyes peered into the deepest, most hidden parts of his soul. And then, a voice that sounded like the rustle of countless leaves, like a myriad of prayers, like the wind that blew between the stars, whispered into his ear. Because we are their flaw. Sonny's eyes grew wide. And then everything became dark. The nightmare was over. Your nightmare is over. Prepare for appraisal. Once again, Sonny found himself in the space between dream and reality. The boundless black void was illuminated by a myriad of stars, with countless strings of silver light connecting them together to form an infinite, beautiful pattern. Now that he had a nascent understanding of sorcery, Sonny saw the pattern differently. His old suspicions grew stronger, slowly turning into a certainty. This was the inner sanctum of the spell, and if the spell had been created by Weaver, then what he was looking at was its weave. The myriad of stars were the nexuses. The strings of light, however, were not the same as the threads of essence he could create himself. Instead, the spell was weaved from the strings of fate itself. As that realization took root in his heart, Sonny shuddered. The scale of the cosmic weave of silver light and numerous stars that surrounded him had already been too vast to comprehend. Now that he glimpsed its true nature, it suddenly seemed even more inconceivable. Yes, Weaver was called the demon of fate, but harvesting its very fabric to create a titanic enchantment was too incredible, even for the firstborn of the unknown. For a demon. Sonny shivered once again. We are their flaw, what did she mean? Hope's answer had shaken him to the very core. The implications were too unthinkable. He did not truly understand what she had meant, but felt as though he was at the precipice of a vast and terrible truth. Sonny was still far away from grasping that truth, however. Were the demons personifications of the flaws that the gods had shed? Is that how the gods had become flawless? Or had the gods been flawless before the demons appeared instead? None of it made any sense. How did the unknown from whom the demons had come fit into this? Was there a hint at who or what the unknown had been or was? As always, there were too many questions and almost no answers. If there was one thing that became clear, however, It was that the relationship between the gods and the demons was even more complicated than he had thought. How infuriating! Sonny had learned a remarkable secret, but had no way to understand it. He stared into the distance for some time, then sighed. Well, whatever. I am too small and weak to concern myself with the secrets of the divine anyway. Although he was not as small and weak as he had been before. He was a master, or rather, was about to become one. As if answering his thoughts, the spell finally spoke. Awakened, your trial is over. Its voice continued to resonate in the black void. A lonesome shadow came to a land of shattered dreams. It was captured and thrown into a cage, but escaped by weaving sorceries from its own soul. The shadow beheaded itself to take the slave collar off its neck and lost its heart to win its freedom. Leaving the Colosseum behind, the shadow traveled far and got ensnared. It lived 100 lives and died 100 deaths within a dreadful nightmare, forgetting what it was and where it came from. The shadow did not break, and so the nightmare broke instead. Free once again, the shadow befriended a mad sorcerer, a feral child, a crippled archer, and a blind prophet. Together, they collected the deaths of the immortal lords and waged a war against the holy city. The lords were killed, the city was destroyed. The shadow broke the chains of hope and set desire free. You have slain and awakened. The spell went on to list everyone and everything he had killed inside the nightmare. Sonny felt that something strange was happening to time inside the black void, because it did not take too long for the spell to finish with that part of the appraisal. And there was a lot for it to list. Sonny had been busy in these past 5 months, after all. He had lost count at some point, but the number of his victims had to be somewhere between 1 and 2,000. He had slain 1,000 enemies at the Red Colosseum alone. A few of them stood out from the litany of names. The Red Priest Nightmare, the 3 War Maidens, a few high-ranking officers of the Flying Fleet, Solving herself. That was the tally of his deeds. The spell was not shy about showering him with praise either. Of course, his most dangerous battle had been the battle of wits against Mordred. After a while, the spell was ready to pass a verdict. You have set free a demoness chained by a god. Your achievements are remarkable. Final appraisal, excellent. With that, it grew silent. Sonny remained motionless for a few moments, then frowned. Wait, what? Excellent, just excellent. What the hell's spell? It did not even bother to add a remark after the appraisal. He had killed hundreds upon hundreds of awakened humans and nightmare creatures, including plenty of fallen abominations and masters. He had even killed a saint. He had learned true sorcery, won a battle against a whole army, caused the deaths of several immortals, and set free a demon against a god's will. He had his head cut off and his heart ripped out, and still lived to tell the tale. Was it not enough to earn a better mark? Not that it mattered, anyway. Unlike the first nightmare, the second did not come with an additional boon. Sonny already had a true name and an aspect legacy. All he was going to receive was the ascension, which was the only reward he truly cared about. But still, why was his performance in the first nightmare appraised as glorious, but his performance in the second nightmare as just excellent? Both achievements seemed equally improbable, but this one was without a doubt much more impressive. Suddenly, an idea entered his mind. Sonny's eyes widened. Can this be true? If it was, his heart suddenly skipped a bit. What was the difference between what he had done in his 2 nightmares? Yes, his deeds in the Kingdom of Hope were astonishing and bordering on impossible, but almost all of them repeated the events of the original past. They had followed the current of fate. The Temple of the Chalice had been destroyed. Sun Prince had lost his arm and ended up with his chest torn open, hanging from the shipwreck island with his leg tangled in a broken chain. Lord Severus died, wrapping his dragon body around the ivory tower. The only substantial change he had achieved was killing Solving instead of letting her suffer for an eternity in the grasp of Wormvine. In the first nightmare, however, Sunny was not sure how the true temple slave fared, but he suspected that their paths diverged quite a lot. In other words, he had carved his own path through the Black Mountain, overcoming the current of fate to a much larger degree. But what did all of this mean? Sunny forgot to breathe. Was that what the spell truly valued? Was that what its true purpose was? Had Weaver created it? To change fate, Sunny reeled from all the information he was receiving. He had already been exhausted after the battle against the Flying Armada, the race across the burning city, the confrontation with Mordred, and the rest. Witnessing Hope in her true form and hearing her inhuman, beautiful voice had almost overloaded his mind. Looking at the spell through the prism of his new knowledge of sorcery had been another shock. And this latest revelation. Sunny groaned. What does it all mean? Of course, he could not be certain of the validity of his guess, but his intuition told him that he was at least partially right. The appraisal of the challengers' performance did not depend on the greatness of the feats they had achieved, but instead on how far they had strayed from the predestined outcome, how well they had resisted the current of fate. The spell wanted humans to strain against the chains of fate, maybe even break them. But why? Why would the demon of fate want fate to be subjugated? By mere mortals, no less. And what was the point of manipulating fate inside illusory nightmares? No matter how much was changed, it was never going to affect the dream realm and the waking world. It was never going to reach reality. Whatever changes had been made, they were going to disappear forever as soon as the nightmare ended. As far as Sunny knew, no echo of the events that transpired in the first, second, and third nightmares had ever affected change in the real world. The only thing that returned from the nightmares were the awakened. He frowned, feeling a vague hint of suspicion appearing in his mind. However, before he could grasp it, the spell spoke again. Its voice resounded in the darkness, enveloping him from all directions. The third seal is broken. Awakening dormant powers. Sunny was about to ascend. Just as before, he felt as though something was waking up inside him. His 4 shadow cores ignited with intense heat, the power within them surging. The heat spread through his soul and his body, rejuvenating and changing them. The feeling was familiar and euphoric. He felt his body being reforged into a stronger, better, more perfect version of itself. His soul was going through the same sublime transformation. This process was already familiar to Sunny, since more or less the same thing had happened to him twice before. However, this time, something was different. Instead of stopping after reaching the threshold of qualitative change and immense fortification, the transformation continued. His body and soul, both turned incandescent and malleable by the furious heat flowing through them, started to melt into each other. They were slowly merging. But they were not simply joining into a single whole. Instead, the 2 parts of his being resonated with each other, reinforcing one another. The power of that resonance grew stronger and stronger, and then exploded once it reached his 4 cores. Under the influence of the resonance, the threshold was demolished, pushing him even further on the path of evolution. And as his body and soul became one, a profound change took place. Suddenly, Sunny felt the shadow essence coursing through every fiber of his being with stark clarity. The difference was so staggering that he almost yelped. The measure of control he could exert on his essence became incredibly precise and fine. Additionally, since his body and soul were now deeply interconnected, the effect of one on another also went through a fundamental change. He could do much more and with much less. This was the true boon of the ascension. And there was something else, a deep and vast shift in his very being that he could feel, but not understand or express with words yet. All Sonny knew was that it had to do with his relation to the waking world, the dream realm, and his connection to both. Slowly, the heat suffusing his newly reforged self subsided and turned into a pleasant coldness. The coldness then disappeared, absorbed into his spirit, his flesh, and his bones. Sonny looked at the black void with new eyes. He felt powerful. He felt as though there was furious might boiling under his skin. He also felt calm and confident, balanced. As he listened to his body, the spell spoke from the darkness. Awakening aspect ability. Aspect ability acquired. Sonny held his breath. Aspect ability name, shadow manifestation. He clenched his fists. Is this what I think it is? However, to his surprise, the spell was not done speaking. Stunning Sonny, its voice resounded once again. Your attribute has evolved. Your aspect ability has evolved. The spell paused for a moment and then added solemnly. Your ascension is complete. Sonny opened his eyes wide. What has evolved? He hurriedly summoned the runes and read them. Name Sunless. True name lost from light. Rank ascended. Class Devil. Shadow cores 4/7. Shadow fragments 744/4000. Sonny stared at the number of his fragments for a moment, then shook his head and skipped ahead to his attributes. Attributes faded, flame of divinity. He had expected the flame of divinity to transform once again, but it was the same. Neither did blood weave and bone weave change. Instead, Child of Shadows was gone. A new attribute had replaced it. Sonny stared at the runes. They read, Master of Shadows. And what? He sucked in a deep breath, waited for a moment, and then concentrated on the shimmering symbols. Master of Shadows, attribute description. Shadows recognize you as one of their champions. The first part was the same, but the second was new. Wait, does this mean that I command wild shadows now? He quickly concentrated on his abilities, looking for the one that had evolved. It was Shadow Control. Now its description read. Shadow Control Ability Description. Your shadows are more independent than most and are invaluable helpers. All shadows respect your authority. It does. The possibilities. If he could command natural shadows to move and change shapes according to his will, so many things would become easier. So many things would become possible. And that new and unexpected gift was going to, without a doubt, synergize not only with his familiar aspect abilities, but with his new one as well. Finally, Sonny moved his gaze and concentrated on his ascended ability. The runes shimmered in the darkness. Aspect ability, shadow manifestation. Ability description. You can manifest shadows as tangible objects. Sonny read the description several times over, then froze for a few moments. The visage of the Mountain King being torn apart by tentacles, made of pure shadows, appeared in his mind. After some time, Sonny threw his head back and let out a loud, triumphant laugh. As his laughter echoed in the darkness, the spell whispered into his ear. Wake up, Sunless. Your nightmare is over. In a dark underground chamber, a metal sarcophagus stood shrouded in silence. Nothing had disturbed the silence, and no light had penetrated the darkness in a long, long time. Until now. Suddenly, the sarcophagus came to life, and a scattering of lights ignited on its surface. A crack appeared on the smooth alloy surface, revealing where the edges of a heavy lid were. The lid smoothly slid away, and a flood of radiant light chased away the darkness of the underground chamber. Cold vapor shined as it rose from inside the sarcophagus. Then, a pale hand rose from within it and forcefully grabbed the metal lip, easily bending its armored alloy. Sonny struggled to climb out of the sleeping pod for a few moments, then lowered his feet to the cool plates of the dojo's floor. A moment later, he swayed and fell down with a yelp. Damnation! Sonny remained sprawled on the floor for a few seconds, trying to understand what had happened and why he suddenly lost balance. Then his eyes gleamed. "Wait, I can speak again. I can speak again." A happy smile slowly appeared on his lips. Of course, he was back to being a human. He had returned to his own body. Trying to move like a towering demon was not going to do his sense of balance any good. With a mad grin, Sonny nimbly jumped to his feet and looked down, enjoying the sight of his slender, pale body. Then he suddenly spun and performed several lightning-fast strikes and kicks. Ah, it is good to be home. He felt so light, so swift, so agile, but most of all, so himself. It was as though a giant weight fell from his shoulders, quite literally. The shadow spawn must have weighed 3 times what Sonny weighed. Being a tall, powerful devil had its own advantages, but he much preferred his true compact self. Not only was Sonny much lighter, but he also presented a much smaller target for the enemies to stick their blades in. And although having only 2 hands seemed rather inconvenient and silly, shedding the cumbersome shell of the inhuman creature felt nothing short of exhilarating. Besides, now that Sonny was a master, his slender body packed more punch than the shadow spawn could ever hope to muster. Not to mention how in tune it was with shadow essence now, and how explosive the result could be. At the moment, Sonny was incredibly happy with his natural stature and height. Only after being forcefully turned into a lumbering monstrosity did he learn to appreciate all the benefits of being light, nimble, and swift. Inhaling the flawlessly filtered air of the underground dojo, he let out a satisfied sigh and glanced at the crumpled metal of the lip of the sleeping pod. He had inadvertently damaged the armored alloy by simply grabbing it too hard. Getting used to his new strength was going to take some time. For a moment, Sonny felt very disheartened about the damage he had done to the expensive machine. Replacing the bent panel was not going to be cheap. It was well within his means, of course, but still. However, then, he tilted his head slightly. Wait, why do I even care? Why would he worry about the luxurious sleeping pod? He didn't need it anymore. He was a master now, a true ascended. If Sonny wished to enter the dream realm, he would travel there physically. His body would not be left empty and defenseless in the waking world. More than that, he could leave the dream realm behind forever. If he wanted to, he could never go back to that hell. He could just remain in the comfort and safety of the real world, enjoying all that it offered thanks to his wealth, citizenship, and social status. For the first time after becoming infected by the nightmare spell, Sonny was free to refuse it. He had won his right to have a choice. He was not a slave to the whims of the world anymore. For now, he could concentrate on his business and open a true memory shop, just like he had wanted. With his accumulated arsenal and knowledge of sorcery, creating a thriving enterprise would not be a problem. Sonny would be able to grow filthy rich and enjoy a lavish or even decadent lifestyle without having to risk his life or think about how to sustain it ever again. He could even sleep in an actual bed and see actual dreams. Would it not be a beautifully happy ending for a homeless street rat from the outskirts? Sonny froze, staring into the distance. Slowly, a pale smile appeared on his face. Yeah, as if that would ever happen. Somehow, he doubted that extricating himself from the spell would be that easy. Even if he learned how to manage the unpredictable nature of his fated attribute, there were other factors to consider. As a master with a special strategic asset designation, he was bound to attract the utmost attention of the forces that governed humanity. Neither the government nor the great clans would leave him be, especially the latter. Sonny suspected that he was going to receive a friendly visit from a representative of one of the ruling clans in the near future. Thanks to subtle assistance from Master Jet, they had largely let him be when Sunny had been simply a promising awakened. Now that he proved his mettle and elevated himself to the venerated status of an ascended, the clans would not remain idle. At the very least, they had to pass on a message that trying to become a saint without pledging allegiance to one of them would not be tolerated. And then there was the whole mess with the Night Temple. St. Tyrus had said that she would smooth things out with clan valor, but Sunny did not know how successful her attempts to shield him from the consequences of Mordred's escape had ended up being. Even though there were no witnesses left to tell the tale of what had transpired in the destroyed citadel, he was hesitant to assume that a great clan had no means of finding out the truth. And finally, there was Nephi's. Even though Sunny was inclined to believe that Changing Star would not abuse her power over him, he could not be absolutely sure. Worse still, whatever certainty he had was based on Nephi's he knew. Who could tell what years of solitude in the harrowing hell of the dream realm had done to her mind? Sunny looked down and then sighed. No, I'll still be rich and lazy one day, no matter what you will all see. His train of thought was interrupted, however, because in the next moment the whole home suddenly shook, and a strangely exhilarated howl resounded from somewhere above. Sunny flinched, then looked up with wide eyes. What the hell was that? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be surprise for all of you. Stay tuned.